Hello, I'm Jeremy, Head Solutions Architect at Devtron, and today we're going to build a Kubernetes native CI/CD pipeline in under 5 minutes. Now before we get started, what is Kubernetes native CI/CD? Kubernetes native CI/CD leverages the software delivery workflows by being a part of the Kubernetes cluster. The benefit of using Kubernetes native CI/CD is that your build step will happen inside of a pod and you don't need to provision or connect any other compute resources externally for your CI build process. From a security perspective, this method is recommended as all of our secrets and external credentials remain within the cluster. When you're managing your pipelines with YAML, you need to write the workflow, you need to update it repeatedly, understand YAML, examine the build process, you need to learn different Linux commands, deploy code manually, and learning Kubernetes. This is a lot for a developer, and it should be unnecessary. Developers want and need something intuitive, simple, and something that doesn't require heavy domain expertise. Even if you don't know much about Kubernetes, you should still be able to develop, execute, and trigger your builds and deployments. That's what we're trying to solve using Devtron. You get an intuitive dashboard to help you quickly set up and manage your CI/CD pipelines on Kubernetes. And so let's get started. I'm going to log in here. Now the first thing we want to do is make sure that GitOps is configured. Because we have it configured, we can move to the next step where we create our application. We're going to create a custom app. I'm just going to name it Jeremy Testing. We can write a description. We can clone an existing application or create it from scratch. Let's select our demo project. And here we have a few mandatory tags. Just going to put my name here. Business unit sales. Create app. So now we get to the application configuration page. First, we need to point to a GitHub repo. So I'm going to copy a sample app I have here. Now that that's done, we can go to the build configuration. What I can do is I can name my container registry and my repository. If I already have a Docker file built, I can point to it. I can create one using a template or leverage Heroku build packs to auto-detect my language and build the image for me. I can set advanced options if I want this image to be created for a specific architecture, or I can leave this blank. Here we get a base deployment template, but for developers, this should be more than enough configuration right here. We can set any ports, HTTP request routes, we can define the resources that our application is requesting, and add any environment variables. No longer do developers need to manually build out these templates from scratch, yet you can hop in here and override or adjust anything that's needed. Configurations over time are saved, and so you can always go back to older versions and look at the changes in the configuration and decide which one you'd like to apply. Once that's done, now we can build our pipeline. So in this workflow, the first thing we're going to do is set up our build process. We can build and deploy from the source code. We can link the build pipeline of this application from another pipeline, or if we're already using an external CI tool and have our images pushed to a container repository, we can just fetch the latest image from that repository and have Devtron just handle the CD portion. We're going to build and deploy from source code. I'll just put in the master branch and create pipeline. Now, if I go to this build, what I can do is I can have it triggered automatically every time a commit is pushed. I can have it triggered manually. but let's go ahead and leave it automatic. I can check this box to have Trivy scan for vulnerabilities. I can allow overrides of the container registry of the image for this pipeline. And I can set pre and post build stages. So for instance, if I wanted to add a task where maybe we do load testing or have SonarQube scan, I can put these in here, apply the appropriate configurations, and have that run as a pre or post build stage. I'll remove this task for now. Going back to the build stage, everything looks good, so I'll click Update Pipeline. Now we have an automatic build process. What we can do now is add our deployment portion. To configure the deployment portion, I'll just add Deployment Pipeline. Select the environment that we want to deploy to. Go with Devtron Demo. Do we want this to execute automatically or manually? I'll say manual for now. And do we want to deploy via Helm or GitOps? Let's go with GitOps. We also have the opportunity to set our deployment strategy. A few of them here: rolling, blue-green, canary, and recreate. Let's go with blue-green. Again, we can click on advanced options and we get our pre and post deployment stage. So maybe after the deployment is successful, you'd like a Jira ticket to be updated with the status of the deployment and have that ticket closed. That's very easy to configure here in the post-deployment task stage. Manual approval for deployment. To add an additional layer of safety to your deployments, you can set a required number of approvals, and anyone having the approver permission for this application in this environment will be able to approve. Let's leave that off for this demonstration and click Create Pipeline. Now that the full CI/CD pipeline is created, we can go to Build and Deploy and kick it off. Select Material. I'll select the latest commit and start my build process. While this is going, I can hop into the details section. I can look at the source code, artifacts after they're created, any security scanning that's going on, and I can watch the logs. Let's give this a couple minutes and come back after it's built. All right, so after a couple minutes, we can see that it has indeed succeeded. Future builds will take much less time as long as you've configured blob storage, because configuration data is cached and stored. I can also look at my artifacts section and see the image as well as the image URL. And so now let's go back to the pipeline. We can see that this succeeded, and because we have a manual deployment, it has not yet deployed. So let's go ahead and select our image, click Deploy. Now, one thing you'll see here is Deploy Last Saved Config. If you ever need to roll back, it's as simple as clicking this button, selecting a previous image, and if by chance there is a diff between the two configurations for those images, it will allow you to review them as well as select if you want the previously used configuration with that image or the most recently deployed configuration. So let's go ahead and deploy. This process is now started. We can go ahead and watch on the application page, and I'll give it a minute and we'll come back and look at the status of our application. All right, now we can see that our application is healthy. We can look at the details of our most recent deployment. So we can see when it was initiated, pushed to Git, applied to Kubernetes, and propagated to our Kubernetes resources. Here I have application metrics enabled, so we can look at the CPU and memory usage of this app, as well as see the underlying Kubernetes resources. I can pull up logs. I can terminal into the container, maybe to do some debugging, as well as view the live manifest. So that's it. We successfully created an application built and deployed it with an automated pipeline. Hope you found this useful, and have a great day.